Hello, everybody, and welcome into another edition of Dodgers Dawgs, part of the Dodgers Daily Network. My name is Austin Brubaker. I will be your host this evening. Just me tonight, as usual, on Monday evenings, Monday afternoons, whenever I have the time to be able to go live on Monday nights. I'm so incredibly grateful to be able to do this and be able to communicate with you guys and talk through Dodgers baseball. I love the game of baseball and love being able to talk about this. And as we are entering into a new year, it is a bit of self-reflection that I think each and every one of us are going through right now. And it is something that I'm incredibly grateful for each and every single one of you and for this opportunity that I have here. So first off, I want to say thank you guys. Happy New Year to all of you. And we've got a fun show tonight. We've got a lot of topics to go through that we have been talking about here on Dodgers Dawgs. Let's start off with the big headliner, which is going to anchor a lot of discussions. Then I'll greet all of you guys. We'll get to a lot of your comments tonight. I also have a lot of things to talk about, a lot of things that are on my mind, and talk to you guys and give you guys access to some tools that you guys can use to look over this Dodgers roster and make evaluations and try to think of scenarios for yourself. I want to make sure that I'm equipping you guys with the knowledge and the tools to make you guys, as you guys already are the smartest baseball fans out there, I want to make you guys even that much smarter and have the tools to be able to back up a lot of different arguments. So the anchor of everything that we're going to be talking about is the Dodgers re-signing Teoscar Hernandez. I, for one, am incredibly excited about that because I believe it makes the 2025 Dodgers just that much better. Entering into the offseason, there was a hole in the outfield. There's a couple of uncertainty spots in the outfield. They do have some guys within house that they could have turned to if they decided to go down that route. But there can be uncertainty for an organization, especially an organization that is this bought in as the Dodgers are, towards relying on a lot of guys who might be younger or unproven. And especially when you have a player like Teoscar Hernandez, who was so entrenched into the culture of Los Angeles, so beloved by Dodgers fans, that they gravitated towards him. His play, his excitement, his power that he produced on the field, his production was essential to the success of the 2024 Dodgers. So it bears reason why fans would want him back for the 2025 season and beyond. I get it, and I agree with a lot of the sentiment of Dodgers fans of wanting Teoscar Hernandez back, and luckily for Dodgers fans, luckily for the Dodgers, and luckily for Teoscar Hernandez, he is back for the Los Angeles Dodgers on a 3-year, $66 million contract. There is a club option for a 4th year that I believe is about $15 million for that club option. There's money up front. There are deferrals, just as they usually are with contracts like this. Teoscar Hernandez gets paid. This is going to take him to his pension. This is as Casey and I had described it on the show on Friday, I believe a fair deal for both Teoscar, who gets what he wants. He gets to return to Los Angeles, where I think his production is going to be optimized in LA, being in this lineup, being protected by some of the great hitters, and being in a comfortable situation. I think Teoscar is at his best when he is in Los Angeles. I also think it is a fair deal for the Dodgers, who, while we've talked a lot about through the course of this offseason, is long-term deals to players, especially players that might have some holes or limitations to them, like Teoscar Hernandez, not the greatest defensive outfielder out there. He strikes out a little bit. There might be concern of some negative regression in the future. It is limited to a 3-year deal, which, especially for this organization that is raking in as much money as they are right now, I think it is a fair deal for the Dodgers to take this risk for Teoscar Hernandez. Dodgers get what they want. They got a player that, in the eyes of many Dodgers fans, they felt like was a need, a necessity, or you could put it as a very strong want, or just makes this offense just that much better, according to a lot of people. Now that is complete, and we have come to terms, and we are excited about Teoscar Hernandez. Every single decision that the Dodgers make with their roster has ramifications for the rest of the roster and how that is situated out for everything within this organization. There is a limitation towards roster spots, both 26 and 40-man roster spots, and how the Dodgers implement that, it determines how much value certain players have, not just to the Dodgers, but to other organizations as well. And especially with the team, which we talked a lot about on the show on Friday. The team, as it currently states, with Mookie Betts at shortstop, with an outfield that consists of both Michael Conforto and Teoscar Hernandez. Gavin Lux is up the middle as well. Tommy Edman in center field. Max Muncy at third base. There is at least some very serious questions defensively about this roster. And I think that is a fair assessment to make about some of the concerns that you might have. I think the offense is just that much better, and I think it's going to be worth some of the defensive limitations that they're going to have. But if you're looking for different ways to make this roster better, I think that certainly is an area that you can point to. We've always, or have been talking about for a long time, not just the defensive potential limitation based off what we saw at shortstop last year for Mookie Betts, but the long-term health of Mookie Betts as he plays the shortstop position. What is that going to do? There are different questions. There are different avenues that this team can go down. But there's also limitations to what they can do with this roster because of the amount of free agent signings or players that have passed their minor league option phase. So what we're going to do today, and we'll get into the comment section before we dive into this, is we're going to look at a tool, a visualization. I know Casey went into detail a little bit about this yesterday, but I want to provide a visualization, something that you can actually tangibly see. What are the minor league options and what does that actually mean for players, and how can we actually map out the next couple of years and how these players fit in and how the Dodgers can help maximize their value? Because I think one of the more key and important players with this conversation, as we talked about on the show on Friday, Andy Pages. What the Dodgers do with Andy Pages, I think, is absolutely fascinating. And if they want to maximize on his value, they are going to have to make a decision of what they want to do with him during this offseason. They're going to have to make a decision incredibly quick because the time is ticking and the options are short for some of these players. So excited to be here in the show with all of you guys. Just going through some of the people in the chat. The Baseball Channel, thank you very much for joining us here tonight. Dodgers Dawgs, part of the Dodgers Daily Network. Orlando, Armand, History Man, Daniel Berry Sports Highlights, thank you very much for joining. History Man, Chris Faborg, Carlos Garcia, Chilltown All-Star, Dodger Blue 82, Benji, History Man again, and some other people as well. Super excited to have all of you guys here being part of Dodgers Dawgs, part of the Dodgers Daily Network. I'm excited for the growth that we are having here. A lot of great stuff. As Casey had showed, he gave you a little bit of a sneak peek. Not really a sneak peek because the videos had already been posted, but I highly encourage you guys. I'm going to highly encourage you guys to do this every single show. Watch the people within this organization and the interviews that we have with them. Whether it's Steven Nelson, play-by-play broadcaster for the Dodgers, whether it's some of the coaches, Chris Gutierrez, Dave Anderson, whether it's some of the players that are within this organization, check out those interviews. Don't just take it from us. Take it from the people that actually work, live, and breathe this for a living. Go ahead and check that out. Highly encourage you guys to do that. It is a privilege to be able to have access to those type of people, and for them to entrust a platform like us with that is not given every single where, every single place. So we are grateful for the opportunity to be able to do that. Going back into this discussion, and this is actually something that you guys, I've granted you guys access to actually down in the description of the video. And what we're going to do is we're going to take, oftentimes on these shows, I've showed you guys some of the things that I've been working on, different visualizations, often used in Excel. Excel is just an easy way to be able to visualize and look through different things. I also have created a Google Sheets option. I know not every single person can access the Excel files, or at least there's been some issues I know with certain people that have had access to it. So what I've down below in the description of this video is there's actually 3 different pairs of links to different research that I've been doing. The first one is actually what we're going to be talking a little bit about today. First, we're going to be looking at the minor league options tab, as well as certain projections that I have for some of these players. I will describe them through the course of the show tonight, as well as future age and payroll of some of the core players that are part of this Dodgers team. In addition to that, there is also Excel and Google Sheets to some research that I have been doing for the Dodgers hitting development. This includes both players that have been in the minor league system for each organization. It looks at every single player who has debuted since 2015 and where did they spend a majority of their time at the minor league level, and how is that translated to big league success. How are the Dodgers doing with those players in the past 10 years during the Andrew Friedman era? Because I think there's been a lot of push to say that the Dodgers system of hitting development is not good. I disagree with that, and so I wanted to provide actual tangible feedback for that. In addition to that, I've also looked at Dodgers drafting status. So every single player that has been drafted since 2015, you can go through, you can see different numbers from there and how that ranks by organization. All of that is in the description of this video. It took hours upon hours of research putting that together. All of that is free for you guys because I'm so grateful for you guys and what you guys bring here to the channel. What we're going to start off today and where we're going to go into first, however, is a visualization of the Dodgers, players on the Dodgers who have minor league options, how many are available, and what does that mean for the future and how we see each and every single role for them. Now, for those of you who have been around for a while, this is going to be a little bit of repeat, but for those of you who might be new to the channel or maybe newer to the game of baseball or general managing, I want to make sure that I'm explaining the topic that I'm talking about. Minor league options. So let's first start off with 26 and 40 man roster. Players, when they are coming up through the minor league system, at some point get added to a team's 40 man roster. 40 man roster just consists of 40 different players that are part of an organization that the team can call up and down at any single point. However, not every single one of those players can be sent down to the minor leagues. Once you have 5 years of big league experience, you are not allowed to be sent down to the minor league level, which means a lot of the veteran type players that the Dodgers like to get, aren't allowed to just be sent down by the organization and forced to spend time at the minor league level unless they give strict approval or unless they sign some type of minor league deal. However, if you're new to the league and you just are coming up through an organization, a major league team has 3 minor league options. Those options, team can use 1 per year on a specific player if they spend a certain amount of days at the minor league level. Why is this important? Because the Dodgers seem to have, and this is something that has worked for the Dodgers, they rely heavily on veteran presence to make their team, their lineup, just that much better. And I think it's been a recipe that has worked. You have a long track record of success. The Dodgers, because of their resources that they have and their willingness to spend financially, go out and actually spend to try to get some of the best players in the game of baseball. And this has been a recipe of success. This is something that we try to make all teams try to do. So they go and fill a lot of their big league holes with big league proven talent, or the right big league proven talent. And then sparingly, there might be some guys that come up and down throughout the minor league system on what we call the up-down train. They come up, spend a little bit of time if somebody's injured or if there's an opportunity or if they're hitting really well and there might be an opening, but they might be sent down to the minor league level. This especially happens with pitchers. Pitchers deal with a lot of injuries. There's a lot of wear and tear, and teams are trying to find different ways to limit the bullets that they are throwing, limit the number of throws that each player has and keep their arms as healthy as they possibly can. So the Dodgers, I think the past 2 seasons have used 40 and 39 different pitchers come up and down. There's different ways to be able to do that. One of the main ways is with minor league options with guys that come up and down the system. This is also true for position players as well, as they have 3 minor league options. However, injuries are much more occurrent for pitchers as opposed to hitters, which means that there is a lot less opportunity if a player is down at the minor league level as a hitter than there is for pitchers, which I think has created a somewhat bit of a illusion. The Dodgers are really good at pitching development, but I think it's given the impression that the Dodgers are only good at pitching development because they only call up pitchers that are coming up through the minor league level rather than calling up a whole lot of hitters. There's only a handful, maybe 2, 3, 4 hitters that they call up per season from the minor league level, whereas pitchers, it seems like there's 10 to 12 different arms that they might call up through the course of the season. And part of that has to do with the injuries and the need to call up players as opposed to position players. There just really isn't as much of a need. So it's important to look at the players. The Dodgers 40-man roster, which, as it currently states, is full. The 40-man roster is at 40 with the addition of Teoscar Hernandez. Certainly, they can move off of those players and add additional players as well. But who the Dodgers move off from is important, because these type of players are going to, their futures within the organization are going to be determined by the decisions that the Dodgers are making right now, and what type of role they could potentially have in the future is really important. So what I'm going to do right now, if I can go ahead and pull this up, and this is actually a document that you guys have access to in the link down below. I believe it's the first pair of links talking about projections and minor league options. This is the 3rd tab on there. This is a visualization of the Dodgers and players with minor league options and how many minor league options they have. So I've grouped this into 4 different categories. We have 1 minor league option, we have 2 minor league options, we have 3, and then we have injured players. The reason why I grouped injured players is for a lot of these guys, they're going to miss significant time in the 2025 season. I have no idea how long that's going to be. I don't know if it's going to be a month, 2 months, the entire season. None of us have any idea. If they miss the entire season, they will stay stagnant and they will stay with the exact same minor league options that they have. They won't lose any of these minor league options. That's why I grouped them a little bit separate, a little bit of a different category that we're dealing with. What is important is we look at each one of these players, because each one of these minor league options has a different value level for the Dodgers and other organizations, but especially the Dodgers, which does not have a lot of up and down availability at the big league level. They need to have guys that can move up if needed, or have guys that can be sent down. More importantly, they need to have guys that can be sent down at the minor league level. First off, I want to say each one of these guys is incredibly talented and worthy of a major league job. And what I'm talking about in this discussion is not a would I want this guy to play for my team, because I think all of these guys I want to play for my team, or to some level and degree with the Dodgers and where they're at. This provides an opportunity because many of these guys, in fact, a vast majority of these guys, will not start the season with the Dodgers and will burn a minor league option this season. And how does that mean? What does that mean from the roster? So what we're going to do is we're actually going to start backwards. We're going to start with 3 options. These are players that the Dodgers are not going to cut unless there is some very serious struggle with any one of them. The 3 minor league options, meaning they can option them down in 2025, 2026, and 2027 if needed, is incredibly valuable. These are the players. This is the number of options that a team wants. That is for Ben Kasparius, Jack Dreyer, just recently added during the offseason, and Edgardo Henriquez, who is, if given an opportunity and is able to locate a lot of his pitches, will not need to use his minor league options. He's just that good. I think we all remember how good Ben Kasparius was during the late part of 2024, started Game 4 of the World Series. There just is very limited room for him on the roster, but I think he's going to have an important role during the upcoming season. Then we move to players with 2 minor league options. The top part are pitchers, the bottom part are hitters. So for pitchers, we have Nick Frasso, missed the entire 2024 season on the injured list. I'm assuming that he will be back at some point in 2025. I don't know when exactly that's going to be. Landon Knack is also. He provided a lot of depth and insurance pitching-wise on the starting end. Bobby Miller, who, if we remember in 2023, one of the better starting pitchers for the Dodgers and still has an insane level of potential, as well as Justin Robleski. There are 4 pitchers with 2 minor league options. I expect the Dodgers to some degree utilize all of these different guys as needed, or at least most of these guys. And here's the thing with pitchers. If they have minor league options, they are of value to an organization, especially an organization like the Dodgers. They're not counting down as much with these guys unless there very clearly is not a role. I don't think they would really worry about these minor league options probably until next offseason. We can start to worry about the minor league options. Then on the position player side, we have catcher Hunter Fiducia. I've been vocal about wanting the Dodgers to trade Hunter Fiducia, not because he doesn't have value. In fact, he actually has quite a bit of value having 2 minor league options, being depth at the catcher position. But I think the opportunity within the Dodgers organization is not there for Hunter Fiducia. And for Hunter Fiducia's sake, I want the Dodgers to find some sort of trade for him. And then Gavin Lux has 2 minor league options. However, if he is on the Dodgers, within the Dodgers organization, he is on the big league club. I don't think there's ifs, ands, or buts about that. Gavin Lux is on this team if he is still within the organization. So I wouldn't really worry about that. And you can really consider that 1 minor league option because he has 4 years of service time. I don't think next year he will have access to minor league options. Then these other players with 1 minor league option are the ones that you should keep in mind right now. We have on the pitching side, Michael Grove. Michael Grove, yes, he does have 1 minor league option left. I know there's been 3 different seasons when he's been optioned down, but one of the seasons he did not meet the level of days needed in order to burn a minor league option, so I believe he only has 1 minor league option. I've done research to verify that. If that is inaccurate, then he would have no minor league options, in which case the Dodgers would likely look to trade a Michael Grove, but all indication is he has 1 minor league option. And then you have 2 players that are likely to be on the big league club. Tony Gonsolin, when he is healthy, I believe is going to be a Los Angeles Dodger and provide innings on the starting pitching side, as well as Alex Vesia, who I don't think any one of us are anticipating him being at the minor league level. Then we get to the players that I think is key to this discussion. We talked a little bit about pitchers. Pitchers, you need as many arms as you possibly can, and if you have guys that can move up and down, you deal with it, especially if there isn't an insane value that you could cash in. I don't think teams are going to pay a premium at this point for Michael Grove, not because he's not talented, but because he's unproven at the big league level right now, which means I think it's more valuable unless there is a direct replacement that potentially could have minor league options for Michael Grove, or a vast replacement that you can't pass on this opportunity to go ahead and move off of him. I think there is still value being able to have him move up and down as needed. You will need those guys, and we can go through past years to see just how many pitchers they need and the amount of innings that optionable pitchers have given the Dodgers in past years. We'll go through that when we get to the projection stage. Remember, all of this you have access to in the description down below, the first set of documents, either Excel or Google Sheets. Go check it out for yourself. Then we get to these 3 names right here. And I think these are the most compelling because these are 3 of the names that the Dodgers if they want to capitalize on the value of each one of these players, have to make a decision about what their plan is for each one of these, not later. They have to make a plan for them now. And if there is no future for them or no plan for them during this season or upcoming seasons, they will lose value if you just keep them within the organization, unless there's some type of injury, in which case they call up and they rediscover who they are, and they are absolutely great. You have Diego Cartaya, catcher within this organization, former top prospect, has struggled a little bit in recent years, going up and making the ranks to the level that is not uncommon. He is still young, he is still highly regarded, and is still incredibly talented, working his way through the system. It just takes time, and with the prospect status that he had a couple of years ago, the Dodgers had to protect him from the Rule 5 draft. This happens a lot with international prospects. I remember back to when the Dodgers protected Yorbit Vivas and Edis Leonard back when they were still at Great Lakes. I believe they just got called up to Great Lakes, and during that offseason, they decided to protect them. Turns out it was a mistake because there was no Rule 5 draft that year because of the strike with Major League Baseball, and that's ultimately the reason why they're no longer one of the main reasons why they're no longer within the organization. With Diego Cartaya, international prospect, still needs a lot of development. He will not start the big league season at the major league level, which means this minor league option will go down to 0 if he stays within the organization. Now, if the Dodgers decide to keep Diego Cartaya around, which is definitely a choice, and he certainly has a lot of talent, they are going to have to make a decision of what they want to do with him going forward. Or if the Dodgers decide to keep him around with the organization, they are making a bet that Diego Cartaya is going to do really well during the course of the 2025 season to either make his way as a backup catcher next season when Austin Barnes likely will not be the backup catcher, or they will likely hope that he rebuilds and gains some sort of trade value. So, with Diego Cartaya, next season, he either has to be on the Los Angeles Dodgers roster, the 26-man roster, playing in Los Angeles the entire season and likely for the rest of his tenure with the Dodgers. Otherwise, the Dodgers have to move on and remove him from the 40-man roster. So the Dodgers have to make a bet. They have to determine, do we think Diego Cartaya is going to regain some of his trade value during the course of this offseason, during the course of the upcoming season, to where we could either potentially trade him during the trade deadline or next offseason when a team is looking for some type of backup catcher with a lot of value that's still young and some potential? Or are we wanting to cash in now because we don't want to necessarily take that risk, and we need additional 40-man roster spots, either to major league quality talent, which there's not a lot of room if you want guys with no minor league options, or other players either at the minor league option who are not on the 40-man roster, a la Michael Busch trade for Jackson Ferris and Zaire Hope, or for other guys with more minor league options than what Diego Cartaya has. They have to make a decision on that. In addition, you have to make a decision of what exactly you want to do with James Outman. James Outman, I've been one of the bigger defenders of James Outman. 2023, he had one of the better seasons as a center fielder in the game. Top 5 to 7 center fielder in the game of baseball by WAR. I think he was 5th in Fangraphs WAR that season. Don't necessarily quote me on that, but it was very close to that value. A 4 WAR center fielder with great defense at a position that the Dodgers right now, they have Tommy Edman, but that is a position of need for the Dodgers. And he is also a player that has had a lot of success. Even last season, had a lot of success at the AAA level. It did not work out well for him at the major league level. There still is a lot of swing and miss in his bat. And given the current projections for the Dodgers roster, which includes Chris Taylor and Gavin Lux, there is currently, without re-signing Kike Hernandez, currently room for one player who has minor league options. which right now, if you don't have Kike Hernandez and you do not trade anybody, would become a battle between James Outman, who is a center fielder, who was one of the more valuable center fielders in the game in baseball in 2023, or Andy Pages, who also has one minor league option left. Both James Outman and Andy Pages only can be sent down to the minor league level one more time, which could be during the 2025 season. And in fact, if you are a fan of Kike Hernandez coming back, which it is very hard to argue given his postseason success, that is a sign, assuming that the Dodgers do not just outright cut Chris Taylor or Gavin Lux, which they are not likely to do, especially on Gavin Lux. Chris Taylor might be a different conversation. That would be sending both James Outman and Andy Pages to the minor league level, meaning they would have 0 minor league options in the 2026 season, entering next offseason, which means that if you want to be 100% sure or capitalize on the value that they have right now, you have to be 100% sure that each one of these guys are going to be guys that can be people that are going to be on the big league roster, that are going to be regulars for the Dodgers in the 2026 season. Otherwise, if these guys both lose their minor league option, they lose value almost instantly because they lose flexibility for other organizations if you want to trade them. Which means the time for self-reflection and evaluation for both James Outman and Andy Pages is now. Now, that doesn't mean that either one of these guys aren't good or talented. In fact, I think a lot of other organizations view both of these guys as very talented and as people that could be impact players within this organization. They might be scared off by the season that James Outman had last season. There could be some valid reason to go ahead and say that. But with a minor league option, another team that has a little bit more flexibility on their roster, which right now on the position player side, the Dodgers really have very little to no flexibility. They have a lot of great players, but they don't have a lot of flexibility on their position players, being able to send guys up and down depending on performance base. If Chris Taylor is not doing good, they either have to cut him or just keep him on the roster. Other organizations, and I just use this organization because they have a lot of guys that can move up and down, like Detroit, they have a lot of young guys. If Spencer Torkelson is not hitting good, they can send him down to the minor league level and bring somebody else up who actually is hitting good. That is just an example of what other organizations can do. That, and it's a rich person problem to have. The Dodgers do not have the ability to be able to do that with a lot of their guys. With James Outman, with Andy Pages, you would have to be certain, because during the 2026 season, if they spend the 20 or so days at the minor league level, or 10 days, or however many it is, in order to utilize the minor league option, if that gets used up, if they want to be on the Dodgers in 2026, they have to be on the Los Angeles Dodgers roster, not the 40-man roster, the 26-man roster. Which means both of these guys, the Dodgers have to make a decision on. And I think this decision, and we'll cut back to me for just a second. You can view that down in the description of this video, the first 2 pair of links, if you want to actually look at this yourself. I think this decision is especially important for a player like Andy Pages. And I've expressed this before. Really, right now, let me just give you, and this was actually was fun because I had communication back and forth with somebody in the comment section on the show, for the show that was on Friday, asking me about my evaluation of Andy Pages, and it might have been undervaluing. I see myself as valuing Andy Pages to a very big level. I actually wanted him during the course of this offseason to be an everyday bat for the Dodgers in 2025. I wanted the Dodgers to actually rely on him because I think the offense is already good enough to where they have the flexibility and room to still be a great offense, to still win the National League West, and give playing time to some of these younger guys and see if they can develop into some of the youth that the Dodgers will desperately need to be part of this lineup if they want to sustain this dynasty run level of success for years to come. I thought there was a great opportunity with a guy who had a lot of big league experience, and so I thought, there is going to be, or at least there should be, everyday at-bats for Andy Pages. That is not going to be the case with both Michael Conforto and a Teoscar Hernandez part of the mix if Andy Pages' defense at center field remains to the same level. And so through a little bit of back and forth, my evaluation of Andy Pages, I see him as a starting caliber outfield, not just necessarily a platoon bat, although he certainly is a lot better versus left-handed pitching at 157 WRC plus versus left-handed pitching versus an 82 WRC plus last year versus right-handed pitching in his rookie season. A lot better against left-handed pitching. I don't necessarily see him or am limiting him to exclusively a platoon bat. I think he has the ability and capability of being a big league regular. Right now, there just isn't an opportunity for him to have those big league regular at-bats at the big league level with the Los Angeles Dodgers to this point. So there's a couple of options that I think Andy Pages currently has with this roster. And this is actually in the comments of one of my videos back and forth. Huge, long, almost a paper that I had to write on Andy Pages. First option that the Dodgers have with him, and let's assume that you want Andy Pages to be on the roster in 2025, which I think a lot of fans have. You don't re-sign Kike Hernandez, or you designate for assignment or find a way to get rid of Chris Taylor or Gavin Lux, and you have Andy Pages. Well, we would likely have to be Chris Taylor, find a way to get rid of that contract, either just eat it, which I don't think is a likely scenario, just given the Dodgers' history with a lot of players like that. They typically like to honor their commitments to those guys as best as they possibly can, or as long as they possibly can, and I think Chris Taylor is likely to start the season on the Dodgers. Just my personal view of how I see it, the Dodgers could look at the situation and say we have no choice but to cut Chris Taylor. I don't see that as a likely possibility, which means you could have Andy Pages as a platoon bat. Either don't re-sign Kike Hernandez or cut Chris Taylor and re-sign Kike Hernandez to take Chris Taylor's spot. You have Andy Pages as a platoon outfielder, meaning he would get platoon at-bats. How it would likely work is he would be the center fielder. Tommy Edwin would move to shortstop or second base, and Mookie Betts would be either shortstop or second base versus left-handed pitching, meaning Gavin Lux gets lesser at-bats against left-handed pitching. You instead insert that with Andy Pages, who was phenomenal against left-handed pitching last season, who had a 157 WRC+, and as I described it, Kerry Carpenter in him into the lineup. If you don't know who Kerry Carpenter is, go look up his numbers last season. He faced almost exclusively right-handed pitching and had, I believe, a 160 WRC plus on the season. It was limited at bats. He had maybe 300 at bats. Some dealt with injury, but there was a vast disparity between his splits, left-handed pitching versus right-handed pitching. It's not that extreme for Andy Pages. It's not an 18 WRC plus against right-handed pitching like it is an 18 WRC plus versus left-handed pitching for Kerry Carpenter, but it certainly is a little bit of a difference. That could be an option. I don't believe that there is going to be a platoon split between Andy Pages and Michael Conforto, because I don't think the Dodgers paid Michael Conforto to get half reps. They paid him $17 million. They could have gotten a Max Kepler, who if they got a Max Kepler, I could see them giving platoon at-bats between a Max Kepler and an Andy Pages. They chose the higher upside. They paid the higher premium, and there is an expectation if you pay that price that he's going to get a majority at-bats. That is Michael Conforto. He's going to get priority at-bats. I'm seeing him getting 450 to 500 plate appearances during this upcoming season, unless there's injury or unless he really struggles. The problem with that option is every single time versus left-handed pitching, or assuming that everybody is healthy, you have a defensive outfield of Michael Conforto, who is now below average defensively in left field or right field. Probably left field because he played exclusively left field last season. You have Andy Pages in center field, who I know a lot of fans were not very happy with his defense out there in center field. I think he can be fine out there, But there was struggles certainly with a lot of that, and he certainly projects a lot better in the corner outfield. And then you have Teoscar Hernandez in one of the corner outfield spots, who, yes, he is better in right field, but I think as he grows in age, his defensive problems are not going to get better in the outfield. I think they're probably going to go in the opposite direction, and I already view him as a below-average defender in right field. You have a below-average defense of Conforto, Pages, and Teoscar Hernandez, in which case you're going to extend innings and you're going to give up runs with that defense in the outfield. That is inevitable. But that is an option for Andy Pages to be a platoon bat. That is option number one. Option number two for Andy Pages is you send him down to the minor league level. You re-sign Kike Hernandez. You don't have any availability because, one, Kike Hernandez is fun and he is a Dodger. You just send Andy Pages to the minor league level because he has a minor league option. And if there is an injury, he is the best player or one of the best players you could call up from injury. And then he gets an opportunity for there. Maybe halfway through the season, there is a designate for assignment, maybe a Chris Taylor, or that's just because of his recent playing. Or somebody else could be in that scenario, but he could fill that type of role, perhaps some type of trade, and then you call him up as needed. But you burn his last minor league option. As soon as that last minor league option is burned, the value that Andy Pages has, which is great, which is grand, goes down drastically the moment that you do that. Now put yourself in another organization's shoes for just a second, which has to be done when talking a lot about trade pieces. I know there is a lot of discussion back and forth about trades on the show last night. You have to be realistic, and you have to think, if I were another organization, what would I value and what would I want? Certainly, there's still going to be some value with Andy Pages, who has the potential and shown that he can at least be a big league average bat like he was last year. If you take the totality of his rookie season, first season at the big league level, was a league average hitter, 100 WRC plus. There is some track record. But if there's no track record in 2025, and the Dodgers decided, you know what, we're going to send him down to the minor leagues for a little bit. If you're another club, and you're looking to find some sort of trade value for him, one, you have no flexibility. So if there's reason why the Dodgers send him down to the minor league level, and it's because he has a weakness in his swing, you as an organization, if you decide to trade for him, would be taking on a lot of risk because there's no flexibility in being able to send him up and down, which means you don't have any maneuverability, just like the Dodgers would not have any maneuverability. So there's limits to his value as well as a limited track record. The reason why players get paid as much in free agency and why the Dodgers typically go for those type of players is because they have a track record of success that they can point to and say, this is some of the reason why this player is going to be good going forward. Some of the best predictions, or some of the better predictions of future success is what you have done in the past. It's not the only measure. And if you just go by off of that, you will be misguided in some occasions, but it certainly is a great predictor for a lot of other occasions. And Andy Pages just will not have that for other organizations to point to, meaning his trade value that he will have would go down. And why do I keep talking about trade value? Because if the Dodgers burn his minor league option in 2026 and say, well, we have Michael Conforto, we'll worry about it next offseason, the Dodgers would have to be 100% certain that he would be a 26-man roster eligible player in order to keep him on the big league roster. Otherwise, they would have to designate for him for assignment or trade him for basically nothing. And right now, Andy Pages does have a lot of trade value because there's a lot of other clubs that would start Andy Pages every single day in the outfield, which means the Dodgers have to make a decision about him. So, I've given you two options so far. There's a couple of other options, or two other options that I mentioned. So the first option, platoon bat, which means he gets very sparingly at bats, not at bats to be able to develop him into the type of player that he has, but you carry Carpenter, Andy Pages into the lineup. That could be a way that they be able to help maximize and probably does help the Dodgers lineup in 2025 when it just limits some of the growth and potential that he might have in the future. That is an option that either means no Kike Hernandez, no Chris Taylor in the most likely scenario of that case, and means that you have to play Andy Pages a lot in center field with Conforto and Teoscar. Option number 2, use the minor league option because it is available. Call him up when you need him. That is an opportunity. It limits his value for the future if you want to maximize on the type of value that Andy Pages has now. Option number 3, you could always start Andy Pages in center field, move Tommy Edman to shortstop, have Mookie Betts at second base, potentially trade a Gavin Lux at that point, and start Andy Pages to get him the big league regular at-bats. The obvious issue with that is with Andy Pages out in center field, which could be an option and could be an avenue that they go down, means that the outfield defense, unless Andy Pages has made significant strides during this offseason, which certainly is a possibility, the outfield defense does not project to be very well. It just doesn't, and we've talked about this with the potential outfield of rushing Pages and Teoscar. I don't think it'd be necessarily that bad at this point, just because Dalton Rushing hasn't had the necessary experience in the outfield, but it would still be cause for very significant concern if that is the case. So option number 4 would be to capitalize on the value that he has right now, knowing that the Dodgers have limited room in the future to be able to maximize on him, and trade him for a potential piece that could help the Dodgers club in 2025. I mentioned a player like a Matt McLain. I only mentioned him because he is a valuable type of player that plays a position of need for the Dodgers at shortstop. Mookie Betts, I don't see as a long-term answer at the shortstop position. That could be a type of player where only in this type of situation with the Reds, I think they need a corner outfielder, or could be looking for an improvement at the corner outfield that has some length. They might be willing to engage in discussion if that is the case. If you wait until Andy Pages doesn't have any minor league options, his value tanks, in which case you got to give up a lot more, which means you have to make a decision right now. Do I think that is likely? Probably not. In fact, I actually think that him being sent down to the minor leagues and using his minor league option probably, and it's between that and platoon Andy Pages as the two most likely scenarios. I don't see them starting Andy Pages every single day in center field again this year, because I think they see him as a corner outfield, which means he's either a bench bat limiting his development, or he's in the minor leagues limiting his development. I think those are the two likely scenarios. There is always the option to be able to trade a piece like that. That is why looking at players with minor league options, and this does not just apply to Andy Pages, this applies to James Outman as well. How their evaluation is, they would have to be very sure that he can make the 26-man roster during next offseason, or there is such a need for him during the 2025 season that they should, or definitely should, keep him around, or they might not see it as much of a difference value-wise between what he is getting offered now, what he is in the future, although I probably would disagree with that, and I think other organizations would probably still take a James Outman and be able to see if they can get and re-get the type of player that he was a couple of years ago. The Dodgers are going to have to make a self-evaluation for him, James Outman, make a self-evaluation for Andy Pages, and Diego Cartaya. That is where minor league options state. That is why they are so incredibly important when the Dodgers are in a state that they are right now, which is win now, which is try to win a World Series in 2025. Totally agree with it. Could not agree with it more for the Dodgers to go all out and try to win a World Series this season. They have to make the decisions that are going to help make their team better now and in the long term. But more importantly, right now, when their opportunity is right at the front door, they have to decide what's going to make their team better now. But sometimes the decisions to make your team better now don't bear fruit years down the road and could be potentially a fault or a downfall or a trip down the line long term. That is the balance of building a dynasty. It is the delicate balance of trying to do everything that you can to win now versus trying to sustain the dynasty as long as you can. It is very tricky. There is no one way to be able to do it because there hasn't been, or there's rarely been, an organization that has had a extended long period of success. And the players that are currently on today's roster will not be on the roster forever on this team. So it's an interesting discussion. Minor league options are important, and they should be looked at, and they should be evaluated. And those are the type of players that you have to look at for potential trades. Now, other organizations are not stupid. They know this as well. They are not going to say, oh, give me all the guys with no flexibility or very little flexibility, and we'll give you exclusively guys that have 3 minor league options, or guys that are at the minor league level that are just as good as these guys that are a couple years away from being Rule 5 eligible, which means you can have them down at the minor leagues without much worry at all. Other organizations know how this works for the most part. Now, there are certain trades that other teams are, and risks that other teams are willing to take, like the Cubs were willing to take a risk on a Michael Busch because of the value that he had and because of the type of bat that they saw him to be, that they saw a big league everyday role for him. They gave him that opportunity. He ended up being a 2 to 2.5 WAR player last year. Really solid. Excited to see what he can do in the future. Other organizations are going to try to pay as little as they possibly can, and they might wait on some of the desperation and lack of flexibility for the Dodgers to trade as little amount of pieces as they can be, especially with an organization they see as spending a ton of money, and other organization, or at least fans of other organizations, view as ruining the game of baseball. I think that's totally false, and I think a lot of organizations are just jealous of the way that the Dodgers are doing it, but that is a viewpoint that other organizations have, and they certainly do not want to help the Dodgers in this aspect. So it is a delicate balancing act between winning now, which is the most important thing, but also sustaining the dynasty, and what they do for these players is so important. So how I see it right now, the roster is pretty much set. I think it is likely that the Dodgers bring back Kike Hernandez. I see it as unlikely to start the season that they will move on for Chris Taylor. I see them giving him at least 2 months to be able to figure things out. And if it's still not working, maybe close to the trade deadline, they can pivot and move to either one of the guys in the minor league level or somebody else. And right now, the plan is Mookie Betts at shortstop, Gavin Lux at second base. That certainly could change, and I know the Dodgers are probably looking at every avenue that they possibly can be in order to try to make that not a reality. But if you want to get something that is good, that meets your standard, either at shortstop or in center field, if you want to get a Luis Robert, you want to get a Bo Bichette, you want to get a Matt McLain, you want to get, I don't think Elliot De La Cruz he's not going to be traded because he has too much value for the team. But if you want to get a value of significant value, you have to sacrifice something. And could that something be somebody that already has limitations for the roster currently as we speak, but has a lot more value within another organization? Fun discussion. That is just the start of what we're going to be talking about here tonight. I will also be going through certain projections as well. Remember, down in the description of this video, there is links to either Excel or Google Sheets in which you can see some of the research that I've done and look over it yourself. Again, do not just take my word for it. Go ahead and look at the research for yourself. And I want to make sure that you guys have every tool that you possibly can be to look at it and be able to evaluate for yourself. So what we're going to do now is we're going to take a little bit of a turn. We're going to look at projections-ish for the Dodgers and where they're at right now. Now, this is an imperfect system and not exactly what it's going to be for the 2025 season. There still are likely to be moves to be made within this roster. But what I've done is I've given my best estimate. Some of them are conservative estimates, meaning I dropped it down a little bit from what I have. And you'll see that especially with the pitching side, I was very cautious with some of the innings. But there are a certain number of plate appearances and innings that you have to reach that have been needed through the course of previous seasons. And so what I've done And we can go ahead, since we've been talking a lot of position player side, we'll look at plate appearances. Which actually was for especially players like Mookie Betts, Freddie Freeman, Shohei Ohtani, could have given them a lot more plate appearances. I pulled it back a little bit just to be safe with this. With these players, you need to have 6,300 plate appearances through the course of the season. Right, that's typically what it's been around. It's bounced around. It's usually around 6,250. Some years, like 2023, there was 6,333 plate appearances for Dodgers hitters. What I've done is I've best mapped out the Dodgers as far as playing time that is likely for the players that they have or players that could be on their roster. And then what I've used is I've used a projection system that is available on Fangraphs, Zips, which is considered one of the better projection systems, which every single team has their own projections for what these players are going to do in 2025. I've just added that and then was able to calculate the different OPS plus, WRC plus, OPS plus, basically the exact same thing for each one of these players. So you can take a look to see, okay, where is some of the playing time that a lot of these guys could be projecting to have, and what is the production value that they're going to have, at least OPS offensive wise, and how could that translate to the Dodgers offense? Because there actually is a lot of reasons to be excited about this Dodgers offense and where they're going. And again, when I'm talking about this, every single one of these OPS plus is done by Fangraphs. The number of plate appearances was done by me. So if you disagree with the plate appearances, that is fair criticism. You can have it to me. If you disagree with the OPS plus, you can take that with Zips, and you can take some of those with a grain of salt. They have their own methodology, and certainly there will be some variance, meaning some of those projections are going to be inaccurate. Again, this is available for you guys. You can actually look and play around with this. You can copy it for yourself and change some of the plate appearances and OPS plus and how that goes about into the Dodgers lineup. As currently we speak, which does not include any sort of transactions that they've made in the future on December 30th, 2024, here's where the Dodgers offense is likely to get plate appearances and where their offense is likely to sit. And so what we have on here is I have three different categories. What I've called core plate appearances. These are the players that they've either signed or traded for in free agency or traded with another organization, and they are playing an important part, relied upon part of the team, or they already have an established big league role that is likely to be theirs during the upcoming season that could be on the bench, or they just are going to be a big league player. There is expectations for them in the 2025 season. Those core players that they have right now, I currently have Shohei Ohtani, Mookie Betts, Freddie Freeman, Teoscar Hernandez, Tommy Edman, Max Muncy, Michael Conforto, Will Smith, Gavin Lux, Miguel Rojas, Chris Taylor, and Austin Barnes. You might say, oh, Miguel Rojas, Chris Taylor, Austin Barnes, those aren't core players. Those are players that can't be sent down to the minor league So as long as they are with the Dodgers organization and as long as they are healthy, they are going to get at-bats. And so what you see is your number of plate appearances on the side right here, as well as their Zips median OPS plus. What Zips, the projection system, is projecting their OPS plus to be, or WRC plus. Remember, 100 is league average. Anything below that is below league average. Anything above is above. So they're projecting Shohei Ohtani to have a 166 OPS plus, meaning they're expecting him to be 66% above the league average hitter. I think he was 180 something last year, so they're expecting a little bit of a bounce back. These number of plate appearances take into account their past history as well as their given role that they have right now, how many plate appearances they are likely to get. You can go ahead and check their past as far as past plate appearances, and you can have disagreements on plate appearances. This is roughly close, and that's what I was trying to get, roughly close to the number of plate appearances that they are likely to get during this upcoming season. That is core plate appearances. Then you have optionable plate appearances, meaning players that have minor league options, how many plate appearances I expect those players to get, which does include Andy Pages, James Outman, Hunter Fiducia, and Diego Cartaya. All of those guys we previously mentioned. I did not include Gavin Lux in this category because he is not going to be sent down to the minor leagues unless something drastic happens. So I consider him to be part of this. You can see their Zips OPS plus projections that they have. Again, you can disagree with it. You can say James Outman has not earned the right to have a 98 OPS plus projection given what he did last season. But this is what the Zips projection model is issuing out, and so that is what I'm going with to be as objective as I possibly can be, rather than subjective and trying to move that up and down. I could create my own model, but I don't have the time or energy to be able to do that right now. So these are the optional guys. There also is plate appearances that happen from guys that are not on your 40-man roster at the start of the season that vary by year. And you can actually see these projections because over on the side, I have the past couple of seasons, 2023, 2024, 2022, and 2021, as well as their totals. So you can see the number of core plate appearances, optional plate appearances, and then other plate appearances, and the success that each one of those had for each category, and you can go through, and a lot of this, especially with the number of plate appearances, you can see how many of those were given to certain players and what that means. So what I have right now, just looking at plate appearances, is I have about 5375, or exactly 5375 plate appearances given to these core players, which does not include a Kike Hernandez. Although if he is signed, he would move to these core hitters, and they would be an additional 300 plate appearances for the core hitters. I have 425 for optionable hitters, as well as 500 miscellaneous plate appearances for other ones. And what this has equated to, if you give their projected OPS model, is an OPS plus of 115. That would be 15% above league average. That's just taking the model that Zips has. That is still an incredible offense with what they have right now. And that's even including Kike Hernandez. They do not like him given his past production. Miguel Rojas, they're anticipating very serious regression because of what he did in 2022 and 2023. I think he had closer to a 70 WRC plus those seasons, so they're projecting that to go down a little bit. This offense is still incredibly good. And you can play around and you can give certain at-bats or change the OPS plus to be able to make it work. This offense is still really good, and we're still projecting a lot of great things comparable to a lot of the numbers that they had previously. 2021, take these a little bit with a grain of salt because a lot of the other plate appearances went to pitchers before the designated hitter was part of the National League, so that is weighing down some of the averages from there. This also can be done with pitchers, and this is the exercise that I wanted to do. While I think it's important to try to map out, although it's difficult to be able to project because you don't know when these plate appearances are going to come because somebody either has to be injured or released or something has to happen in order for these guys who are sent to the minor leagues and to get plate appearances. There's a lot more movement with the pitchers. And so the reason why I wanted to do this out is, do the Dodgers have the necessary pitching depth in order to get them through the season? And so what I've done to the best of my ability and being extremely cautious and conservative with a lot of these arms, trying to say, hey, for the bullpen arms, I do not want them to approach or get to that 60 inning mark, which for a lot of past season has happened to a lot of their arms. I'm afraid that could wear down some of the arms during October, so I wanted to be conservative for some of the bullpen arms. Usually the first pitchers that are available are starting pitchers, where the bottom ones are usually relievers, especially in this top core innings section. I also was very conservative as far as starting pitching innings given out. I did not want to give more than 120 innings to a guy like a Tyler Glasnow or even a Yoshinobu Yamamoto. Didn't want to give that many to a Blake Snell and mapping out innings. And even with the limitations for some of these innings, worrying about the transactions and how they can make this work. Are we still able to maneuver and make this work and be able to provide innings? Again, being safe for a guy like a Shohei Ohtani, who I only have as 50 innings, who I don't know what he's exactly going to get. This does have Clayton Kershaw as part of his core innings because I project him to be back. Doesn't give a ton of innings for a Dustin May or a Brusdar Graterol. I also did not include any innings for any of these 4 guys, Hurt, Ryan, Sheehan, or Stone, just because I don't know when or if they'll be back. And then there's an avenue for other pitchers as well. All of these have Zip's median ERA of what they project for them, except for Nick Frasso, who I did not see a projection. I was very safe with the projected ERA with him. Along with a potential Roki Sasaki or starter, I was safe for him as well as what I call designatable relievers. If you go through and you actually scroll on this side, you can see the number of arms. Like, all of these guys pitched games for the Dodgers last season. It does include guys like Ben Casparius and Edgardo Henriquez because they were added in order to protect them from the Rule 5 draft and pitch them late in the season. That's why they're in this other category rather than this category. All of these guys pitched a decent amount of innings, which they did get some innings from the guy like an Anthony Banda and Brent Honeywell. But it also included a Johan Ramirez, a Eliezer Hernandez, and Nabil Crismat, Nelson Lamet. All of these different guys made the season for the Dodgers, and the number of innings that they had to get through work through the course of this season. And you have to account for that and account for the guys that you can just move off from pretty easily. This is why a lot of guys get invited to spring training, and some guys, especially early in the season, get added to the major league roster that you might not necessarily expect. It's to give a lot of these other guys rest and to keep this train of Dodgers baseball working. These are very loose. These are very cautious projections for the starting pitching rotation. And yet I was still able to find, even with limitations to some of these guys, like I think some of these guys probably need more big league innings. But some of these guys are getting still a decent amount of work. Like you're still able to find Landon Knack in 80 innings. Bobby Miller, 80 innings through the course of the season if you're able to work the up-down train. To be able to make that work. You're still able to get a little bit of this work, and you're still able to have an ERA that is respectable and still pretty solid and really in line with a lot of the past ERA, like what they had during the 2024 season, which wasn't spectacular. It wasn't one of the best seasons in the history of the game in baseball like it was in 2022, and that pitching staff in 2021, that was absolutely ridiculous. But you want to be careful because you don't want to wear out the core pitchers that you have. So I thought this was a fun exercise, actually mapping out the ERA projections and the OPS plus projections that players have and being able to maneuver and play with the number of innings, be able to provide additional rest. This also goes to show you, and a lot of these projections, if you want these guys to be as healthy as they possibly can be, if you want to limit a lot of the innings of these guys, one, you need guys that can move up and down. And right now, on the major league roster pitching-wise, there's not really a whole lot of opportunities for guys to move up and down. That's when potentially guys getting some rest, spending some time on the injured list, could force some additional rest on the roster. Dodgers have a lot of history with moving guys up and down, but it also likely would take a lot of these guys, a lot of these pitchers, including a lot of guys that can move up and down the system, to be able to make something like this work for the Dodgers in the 2025 season. Because the most important thing for the Dodgers on the pitching side wise is to have Blake Snell, Yoshi Yamamoto, Tyler Glasnow healthy and ready to go for the postseason, as well as a bullpen that was used the entire postseason, including a couple of bullpen games in which they were worn out. They were heavily relied upon. The Dodgers have to do everything that they can to make sure that through the course of the season they stay as healthy as possible, which means you need guys that can move up and down in order to keep them healthy. I know we want to make the bullpen as good as it possibly can be and fill all the roster spots right now. One, if you do that, if you add another reliever or two, you're not going to really have any flexibility with the roster as it stands. Right now, we're the Dodgers for their projected bullpen, if everybody is healthy, which this always, and this is not including Brusdar Graterol, who's going to start off the season healthy, and this is including Dustin May as part of the rotation. Your bullpen is Michael Kopech, Blake Trinan, Evan Phillips, Anthony Banda, Ryan Brazier, Alex Vesia, and then you have two other spots that you can fill in holes. You can fill in additional spots. You could add in another guy, but you would only have maybe one guy that can provide length, or one guy that you can come up and down and be designated for assignment. There's not a whole lot of room that is part of this roster. Certainly you can move guys and transfer guys and they can become part of the roster, but there's a lot of moving pieces with the Dodgers and where they're at right now. So, reason why I pointed that out for you is because I want you to be reassured. Where the Dodgers are at right now, they are in a very good spot. If they did nothing through the rest of the offseason, they would still have an incredible team. They would still have a top 5 offense in the game of baseball, or projected to have a top 5 offense in the game of baseball. And their team pitching, even if they still rely on a lot of younger guys or guys that they are going to eventually designate for assignment, or don't know where exactly those innings are going to come from, they're still going to have a solid ERA, and they could still make that work with providing additional rest for some of their guys that they're going to need to rely upon, those core pitchers for the postseason. You can go ahead and actually play around with this too a little bit. This is provided in the description of this video. That is the first pair of links, either Excel or Google Sheets, what I recommend doing, because I'm assuming that you guys can only view it. If you can actually edit it, then I didn't set it up right, in which case somebody might mess it up. I encourage you guys, don't do that if that is the case. But you guys can go ahead and copy that over and be able to play around with it depending on what you think is best, or interchange different names with other guys that could be added to this team. If you want to add a Tanner Scott in there, what does that mean for the workload, and whose workload do you take down for that, as well as where do you see the Dodgers going with their roster from there? There's a lot of decisions that have to be made in Los Angeles. It's the offseason. It's fun. We get to talk about all of these different stuff. And when you're talking about this organization, there's just so much talent to go around. And I know a lot of people say, oh, there's easy guys to be able to designate for assignment. I don't think that's necessarily the case. I think each one of these guys has value and has the ability to be a big league caliber player, either at this point or in the next season or two, for a lot of these different guys, or at least has very serious potential. In the case of a guy like a Diego Cartaya, I still believe in a lot of the potential, even though he is not major league caliber at this very moment in all aspects of his game. Certain aspects, yes, maybe not in every single aspect quite yet. Each one of these guys has insane value, which means I don't want the Dodgers to miss out on the value that each one of these guys has. I want them to be able to capitalize and not miss out on opportunities, because these guys are incredibly good. The farm system remains strong and consistent. You can talk to every single person that follows farm systems as a whole and what they think of the Dodgers player development, what they think of the organization as a staff. You can look at the numbers yourself as far as what the Dodgers have done well and what they continue to do. And you can hear from the actual coaches here at Dodgers Daily. I don't want to see the Dodgers miss out on opportunities, and I don't want to see these players miss out on opportunities that they have earned and that they deserve to have coming up for this season. So those are some fun things to be able to figure out and digest as the Dodgers are trying to go back-to-back, be the first team to do it since the late 90s, early 2000s, and the New York Yankees back when they were able to do that. Does not happen anymore in the game of baseball with the way things are working out, with the competitive nature that teams have, and especially with a lot of the analytics that they have. But I've been long neglecting the chat. I've had a lot to talk about with the Dodgers. Hopefully this has been insightful and provided you guys a lot of information as far as the status of the roster and some of the decisions that the Dodgers, you might not think the Dodgers have to make, but if they want to capitalize on the value of a lot of these players, are going to have to make, as well as what they might be looking at projection-wise for this season, because they have to be looking at that as well. One thing that wasn't included is projection-wise defensively, which looks a lot less exciting and could impact especially some of the innings. When you're talking about innings for pitchers, if you don't have a great defense, innings for different clubs means different things. If you have pitchers that pitch a little bit more to contact but have great defense, innings might be 3/4 of the number of pitches that the Dodgers, which is a team that likes to get strikeouts and maybe not have the greatest defense with throw, and so perhaps looking at number of pitches that pitchers throw might be an important aspect to look at, because I think that is a more valuable piece than just looking at innings pitched. Just another way, the area that my brain is going to about different ways to look at things for the future. The Dodgers are looking at all of these things, looking at all of these decisions and taking everything into account as an organization. But for you guys, I want to go ahead and talk with you guys as far as what you guys want to talk about and answer some of your questions before we get off tonight. So let's go ahead and get to some of these questions in just a second. Benji, what's up to you as well? Thank you for joining and being part of this. I'm going back towards the beginning of the chat just because I haven't been able to look into this. Chilltown All-Star, we need the big cherry on top named Roki Sasaki. Certainly would be amazing to have Roki Sasaki be part of this organization, one of the most valuable free agents that has entered the market in recent years. He might be one of the most, given his upside, given his potential, and given that you really don't have to pay him much and you get him for several years. Certainly the most valuable international free agent in a long time, with him being this close to big league ready. There's other guys that have developed into being great players, but there's still a lot of uncertainty to them. I think there's a little bit less uncertainty with Roki Sasaki now. I think he would be amazing for the Dodgers, and I'm rooting for him to be part of it. Carlos Garcia, I'm sad to see Buehler to go to Boston. I'm excited to see if we get Sasaki. Certainly was sad to see Buehler go to Boston and not be part of the Dodgers. But I think if you look at some of the projections and you look at his actual role, it becomes a lot more difficult to see where he fits in as part of this roster, especially being another one of those guys that you would have to sign to a big league deal that would not have a lot of flexibility. There already is not a lot of flexibility. There is Tony Gonsolin plus maybe 3 different relievers, so you have room for maneuvering for 4 different guys on the big league roster, assuming that Dustin May is healthy and in the big league rotation. That just doesn't leave you with a lot of room to move up and down, and Walker Buehler wouldn't help with that aspect, but certainly is a phenomenal player. Dodger for life. Forever grateful for what he was able to do for the Dodgers, not just during this past season in the World Series, but for the past several years. He will always be welcome in Los Angeles, and we're rooting for him to have a lot of success and to continue the legend that is Walker Buehler. Let's see, continuing on the chat, Helen B. Austin, if you share time with Outman, Pages, and Conforto in center and left, they each could get over 400 at-bats. That is possible. However, there's a lot of maneuvering that has to be done in the roster in order to make that work. Right now on the big league roster, there currently is 1 opening, if you don't include Gavin Lux, for those guys to take big league spots. Because on the big league roster for the position player side, the starting lineup for the Dodgers, if it were tomorrow, is Shohei Ohtani, Mookie Betts, Freddie Freeman, Teoscar Hernandez, Max Muncy, Will Smith, Michael Conforto, Tommy Edman, and Gavin Lux, with the bench being Austin Barnes and Miguel Rojas. The Dodgers intentionally picked up their options during the course of this offseason, which means they will be a Dodger for at least part of this season, if not significant time through the course of the season, as well as Chris Taylor and either James Outman or Andy Pages or Kike Hernandez at this point. Unless you trade a Chris Taylor and you don't re-sign Kike Hernandez, then you could have both James Outman and Andy Pages on the big league roster. That could be a possibility then, but only if that is the case, and that I just don't see as a realistic possibility at this point. Or if you trade both Chris Taylor and Gavin Lux and then re-sign Kike Hernandez, you could have both of those players potentially be added to the roster. It just becomes very difficult with where the roster is right now, seeing them get significant playing time. And also, I think there's a tendency to go to a lot of the guys, a lot of reliable guys, and I just don't see it as a realistic possibility at this point, although they could prioritize that if they want to and find different ways to be able to get those guys plate appearances. I think they know this is a problem, and I think they know that they have to do that, but there is also a pressure to try to win the World Series as best as they possibly can be. And if they can get a big league guy who has done it in the past versus some uncertainty about the future. While I don't think that is good to consistently do if you're the Dodgers, that is a pattern that they have done, which is why I don't see James Outman and Andy Pages getting significant plate appearances during the course of this season. It becomes a lot more difficult to be able to do so. That's just my feedback. You're welcome to disagree with that if you would like. Carlos Garcia questioned, how many homers does Ohtani hit this season? I say 50 plus again. Depends on how healthy he comes back at the start of the season with everything that went down towards the end of the postseason run. But I would not bet against Shohei Ohtani getting 50 home runs again. I just can't bet against what he is and what he has done. He's just amazing and phenomenal type of player. So if he gets similar plate appearances to last year, then yeah, he's gonna hit 50 home runs again, or at least get 40 something home runs again, depending on what he gets. He's absolutely phenomenal for what he was able to do. Let's continue to go down right here. Orlando always need a handful of vets on minor league deals ready to be DFA'd after they eat some innings. That always is the case for the Dodgers, and certainly something that you have to map in and be able to figure out. And also why, once they move guys to the 60-day injured list once spring training starts, you don't want to fill up every single one of those 40-man roster spots. One, they could come back, and you have to find some sort of way to welcome them back onto the roster. If they get healthy, like for Bruce Gratterall, when he comes back, you want to have a spot open for him and not have to designate for assignment anybody that you don't want to designate for assignment. But also there needs to be maneuverability on the roster, and part of the way to do that is to have guys that you can add onto your roster and then move off from if needed or when needed, and certainly that has been the case. You can go through the past 4-year history of the Dodgers doing that with the spreadsheets that I was able to create for you guys. Mike Boyer does not like Gavin Lux or CT3, wants to trade them both, or he actually likes them, and a lot of people want to trade both Gavin Lux and Chris Taylor. He likes both of them. I respect both of them for what they've been able to do, and I can vastly appreciate them. The tricky thing with Gavin Lux is, do the Dodgers prioritize the spot for Gavin Lux at the second base position more than they prioritize the long-term health of Mookie Betts? I think what this conversation has to come to is what is best for Mookie Betts, not just for 2025, but in the future and beyond. And is there going to be significant enough ramifications if Mookie Betts plays shortstop long term, not just defensively but health wise for him, that causes you to want to move on from a player like Gavin Lux, because Mookie Betts would shift over to the second base position, and I don't think Gavin Lux can play or is comfortable enough, or I would feel comfortable enough for him to play another position at this point. He just hasn't proven it at this point. I like him a lot as a player. What he did in the second half was truly phenomenal and helped carry this Dodgers offense through significant portions. And Casey will be one of the biggest defenders of him because he was there for a lot of big moments, including when Gavin Lux got called up. He is somebody that means a lot to Dodgers fans, but especially those who have watched his development and him grow. It's about fit for the roster and making sure that you're doing everything you can, especially for the players that you pay big money towards, to protecting him. And I think that's where a lot of the fair arguments for a Gavin Lux potentially moving off of him comes from. And then with Chris Taylor, he obviously struggled through the course of the past couple of seasons, and just wasn't able to get to the level of production that he had gotten. And with him being on the roster, it limits your ability to be able to both add guys and be able to play some of the young guys, which needs to happen at some point if this dynasty is to continue. The Yankees dynasty does not happen if they don't give at-bats to Mantle after they played Lou Gehrig, and if they don't give consistent at-bats to Jeter after they played some of the other guys. Or you get what I'm talking about. There's young guys that have to step up. Not saying that the Dodgers hitting prospects are all going to be those guys. most of the time hitting prospects or guys that come up through the system are not those type of players. It's very rare that you run into those type of players, but you have to give those guys at bats, and you have to do it before it's too late and before this team gets too old in order for it to be too late when you're running both on the bottom end of the aging curve and the back end of the other aging curve. That becomes very difficult to be able to do. Let's continue on doing this. Dagger Dog, trade Miller, Muncy, Lux, Outman, Pages, and Conforto. Get Scott, Arenado, Kim, Santander. You have a better team and 2 40-man roster spots. Certainly a lot of maneuvering right there. I don't think the Dodgers are going to trade Max Muncy. There could be possibility that they trade Miller, Lux, Outman, Pages. But you're getting guys that are added to your 26-man roster, which means you have a lot less maneuverability and you have to make everything of that work. They're also not trading Michael Conforto. They just signed him to $17 million in the offseason. I don't think they're going to be in for the outfield market, especially corner outfield market, because they have Conforto and Teoscar. Tanner Scott could be a possibility. Arenado I still don't see as a possibility at this point, because if you're worried about the outfield defense, I'm much more concerned about the up the middle defense. And if you keep Max Muncy around, which I think the Dodgers are likely to do, even if you have Arenado, who has been solid defensively at third base, your up the middle defense would be Mookie Betts at short, Max Muncy at second base, which I think is not good at all defensively. Could surprise me, but I just don't see that as being a great defensive up the middle pairing. Now you could trade Max Muncy in order to make that happen, but he's under a very team-friendly deal and has had a lot of production over the past couple of seasons to make it to where he's a very good, valuable player. Kim could be a possibility because he won't be ready until sometime during the middle of the season. I just see that as a little bit less of a likely possibility, although I thought that beforehand, got back on the train. Now I'm a little bit off. Certainly is a valuable player that we've been talking about for quite a while and could fill the hole at the shortstop position. Carlos Garcia, can Cartaya be backup catcher 2026? He possibly could be. It's going to be a lot for him to be able to grow into that role. There's still a lot of steps that he's going to have to take. And you also have Dalton Rushing coming into the wings in 2026. And unless Dalton Rushing and Will Smith get additional positional versatility to be able to maneuver back and forth with both of them, I just don't see all three of them being on the roster. They have had 3+ catchers at the minor league level, like the 2023 Great Lakes Loons team had Griffin Lockwood Powell, who could also play first base and catcher, Yainer Fernandez, who could play catcher and second base, as well as Dalton Rushing, who could play first base, designated hitter as well. Having first base and designated hitter really clogs up versatility at the catcher position. And I think the Dodgers value Dalton Rushing incredibly highly right now and don't want to move him off the catcher position. So I think it becomes very difficult to see Diego getting the backup catcher role with the Dodgers. It's about when does his value become the highest and where is there an opportunity to be able to either wait it out or maneuver him to get him potentially some opportunities. Still incredibly talented player. I still believe in the talent that it is a Diego Cartaya. But Dalton Rushing is very valuable as well. Let's see. Helen B is talking a little bit more about Pages and Conforto in center field, and then Conforto, Pages, and Outman in center field, Conforto in left. Jason Soretti, love Teo, but don't like what this means for Pages, Rushing, and Outman. Yeah, another thing with Rushing, which with Dalton Rushing, he's going to be down at the minor league level to start the season, unless he absolutely breaks out or unless there are some injuries that happen through the course of the season. I think he good thing about him is he's not using up minor league options during the course of this season. But his clock is ticking a little bit, and the Dodgers, he's a very valuable player. He was one of my keys to this offseason as far as what things could happen for a Dalton Rushing going forward for this offseason, where decisions are going to have to be made for him going forward on this roster. I think he was one of the key players for the Dodgers' future, because I think the Dodgers need to get younger at some point, and certainly they're not going that direction with the way that they are trajecting to go at this point, and certainly he could help with that. He still needs some time to be able to grow and develop in left field, as was stated and talked about by bench coach Chris Gutierrez, who got to see a little bit of him on the Down on the Farm segment yesterday. Also, full interview is posted here on Dodgers Daily. I just don't see a role or thing or a lot of plate appearances that could have been there at this point, given both the signing of Conforto and Teoscar. You can agree with those signings, but since both of them happen and both of them are corner outfield, I think that is the key. Since both of them are corner outfield and just about everyday corner outfielders, that means that a lot of the playing opportunities for both Pages, Outman, and Dalton Rushing are going to be very limited. Let's continue on with the chat. Hepatitis see you later. Pages showed a lot to be excited about. Give him some runway. The question is, where are you going to give him that runway? Where are you going to actually give the runway in order to be able to get Pages to the level that he wants to be? And there's still some reason to be excited about what he can do going forward. I just don't see him as a strict platoon with Michael Conforto. And I don't think the Dodgers paid $17 million to be able to do that. I just can't get my head off of that. And so then you would have to play Pages out in center field, in which case that could be a possibility. And I think that is going to be something that happens if he's on the team going forward, is he's going to get a lot of time probably in center field, move Tommy Edman to shortstop, Mookie Betts to second base. But even that, there's some concerns with that. It is not perfect to the way that this is lining up, which has some concerns for where this team is going to be going forward. We'll continue to go with these. Yang Yi, thank you very much for joining us. What about all of these Dodgers pitching prospects? Dodgers currently have 4 starting pitchers signed for 4 years or more. Where all these prospects will fit into the Dodgers rotation? Very hard to project at the start of the season, but it is imperative for the Dodgers to be able to give these guys plate appearances at some or not plate appearances, innings. I'm talking about pitchers. It's very hard to see where these guys are going to get innings, but it happens through the course of the season that these guys do get innings. And selfishly, as an organization, this is just from a selfish organization point of view, they need a lot of these guys to be able to come in, plug in innings. I was able to show you where a lot of these projections could be. How they get to those projections is a little bit of a mystery by how they're going to be able to do that. They need a lot of guys to be able to help supplement innings, because even the guys that they do have on their roster, I do not want those guys coming anywhere close to 200 innings pitched, because I want those guys healthy and ready to go during the postseason, which means there's going to be innings available for other guys, especially if the Dodgers do have a 6-man rotation or a 6-man rotation once Shohei Ohtani is ready to pitch. However they are able to make that work, they're going to have guys that can move up and down and be able to do that. They also need guys that can provide length out of the bullpen, which luckily for the Dodgers, a lot of the optionable guys are starting pitchers naturally. Guys that have had bulk innings and can take the brunt of some of those. That's where a lot of the innings are going to have to come. It's not going to be here's our 5 starters and then trade everybody else who is part of that starting rotation. The Dodgers have to keep as many arms as they possibly can to make this run work. Going to get to just a couple more comments. Right now, Chilltown All-Star Mookie will be replaced by an everyday shortstop. Rumor has it Dodgers trying to get Bo Bichette right now for Bobby Miller and prospects. I don't know if that rumor is necessarily true, but it would make sense to move Mookie Betts potentially off the shortstop position, just because that might not be his natural position. I don't think it's his natural position, but that's where right now he fits a need. And what other choice could the Dodgers potentially have? There's not a whole lot of options if you want Gavin Lux to be at the starting lineup, which leads to a lot of potential trades for Gavin Lux. Benji, Tanner Scott, Roki Sasaki, and Luis Robert Jr. trade. Luis Robert would certainly fill the mold of of the center field option and fill that need. Move Tommy Edman to shortstop, Mookie Betts to second base. I voiced my concern about the offensive profile of Luis Robert and giving up a ton for a player like that. Doesn't walk a lot, strikes out too many times. I'm certainly not the biggest fan of that, but certainly get the idea of getting a center fielder like that, if that is the case that the Dodgers want to do. Talking a little bit about these. Let's see. Benji's talking about, can you make it publicly available? I would just try to copy and paste it over. The reason why I don't want to make it, I would have to go through and double check to see if I can make that publicly available. I want to do it without giving people the ability to be able to change the actual text within there. Not because I think anybody would do it maliciously, but it would just take one to be able to do that and ruin it for everybody else. So I want to make it so that it's viewed, but you can certainly, I believe, still copy and paste it into another document. That could be a potential way if you are not able to do so. So continuing on with just some of the last part of the comments, we'll just go to the bottom of the chat really quick and see if we have any other ones. Orlando's talking about Lux get platoon when lefty pitching. That could be an option to get Pages in there, but is that best for his long term? And you would be having him likely in center field as well. And I think that's going to probably do it for the show here tonight. Talked a little bit over an hour and a half, which typically I like to keep this a little bit closer to an hour, but I have a lot to say, as usual. And I'm very appreciative of each one of you guys. This, I believe, is going to be the last live show in 2024 here on Dodgers Daily. So on behalf of Casey and on behalf of everybody who's done a show here, Dodgers Daily, over the past year, I want to thank you guys sincerely from the bottom of my heart. For each one of you guys being able to communicate and go back and forth with you makes this offseason enjoyable and fun to go from, and pushes and challenges me to be the best baseball mind that I possibly can be. I try to think through a lot of these things, and you guys help me think of things that I did not think of previously. So I thank for all of you guys who have been part of this and that continue to view and invest time in here. We try to provide as best of content as we possibly can be. There's a lot of other places that do great stuff, and I encourage you guys to go check those out as well, because I want to see the game of baseball continue to grow, and you guys are certainly a part of it and help grow me personally as a person trying to bring a lot of this information from you. Truly is a privilege to be able to do this, and there's a lot of different avenues and different ways the Dodgers can go about, which means there's room for a lot of different opinion of where the Dodgers could go. So it's certainly fun to talk about, and it's leaves never a dry moment in the off season. So grateful for you guys, grateful for a phenomenal 2024 in which the Dodgers were World Series champions. Let's do a repeat of that in 2025. Let's get the Dodgers a World Series championship. Let's get the Loons a Midwest League championship in 2025. I'd be very excited about that. And let's go ahead and enter this season with gratitude for what has happened, for the Dodgers winning a World Series championship, for the blessings that are bestowed upon us in our lives, but also entering with a new sense of purpose and dignity and responsibility during this upcoming year. Be safe. Have a good new year. We will see you guys. I believe the next live show is going to be Friday night, January 3rd. Casey and I will be on that show. We'll be happy to talk with you guys through all of these different parts. Continue to talk Dodgers baseball. We might have new news to talk about, or we will continue to talk about whatever is relevant in the course of Dodgers baseball. So until then, until 2025, on behalf of Casey and myself, thank you for tuning in, and go Dodgers.